You know, I'm gonna bet that you probably have a favorite superhero. And no, it has nothing to do with drones, but I'm just gonna tell you what my favorite superhero is. It's Deadpool, because Deadpool's whole motto is minimal effort. Hey everybody, I'm Bacon Ninja, and this is my current perfect freestyle build. We're not going to talk about this build today, I just want to break it out and show you what it is to remind you. This is a GEPRC Mark V Pro running a SpeedyBee F7V3 stack with an HD0 Freestyle VTX and all the HD0 gear with the motors I like, all the good things that I like. That is what this drone is. But you see this thing up on top of it? That is where my action camera goes. We all run action cameras on our drones, right? Even if you're a freestyle pilot. Now, if you're a racer, you might not run action cameras on your drones. And if you're a racer, this video isn't for you anyway, because you shouldn't be racing with anything I'm going to show you today. But this is my new drone. That might be my next perfect freestyle build. And you see that big honking camera in there? You've probably seen it 10,000 times on YouTube already, but that is the DJI O3 Air Unit camera, or the same camera that came in the Avata. And in the back here, I have a DJI O3 Air Unit on my new Quadmula Siren F5 split frame, which we'll get into later. Anyway, today we're going to find out with the DJI O3 Air Unit, how good is minimal effort? Is it good enough for freestyle? Most of us freestyle pilots care about the quality of our freestyle edits, but not nearly as much as cinematic pilots. And I've seen a lot of footage with this camera lately, but it's all been mostly shot in cinematic settings. So let me show you why I think that might not be the complete picture of this thing. And the first reason is because these are the goggles that are really part of the O3 system. These are the DJI goggles too. They're a new updated version of the older goggles. And these goggles are $600 right now and literally out of stock everywhere. Now, stock is going to come back in. That's not a big deal. But it's still going to cost you $600 to pick these up. They had an introductory price point, but that's all kind of wishy-washy. I don't know what happened to that. They're $600. So there's a good likelihood that you're going to be flying on these. These are the goggles V2, the older style of goggles, and they do connect to the O3 system. The difference between these and the goggles 2 is these have 120 hertz screen refresh rate, which means that you can actually shoot from the camera in the O3 Air Unit at 120 frames per second. With the goggles 2, you can only shoot in 100 because these screens only have a 100 hertz refresh rate, so it locks the system to the refresh rate of the screens as its max. That's not too big a deal. I like the 120 hertz because I like the low latency, and I can shoot 4K in 120 FPS when I'm running these goggles. The real issue is that I'm a 4.3 pilot, which means that when I fly, I usually fly looking at a square version of the image, not a rectangular version, or what would be called a 16:9, because I usually fly HD0 on these, the SkyZone O4Ls. They're very similar to the O4X, but these are a 4.3 format goggle, and that's what I usually fly because you can just see more of what's around you in 4.3 if the camera you're running is a native 4.3 sensor. So again, what I mean by that is if the camera you are shooting with natively has a square sensor, the 4.3 means you'll use all of the pixels. If you use a 16:9 chunk out of a square sensor, you're essentially cutting the top and the bottom off and losing all of that data. If you have a 16:9 native sensor, you get all the pixels if you're looking at 16:9, and if you go to 4.3 on that sensor, you cut the edges off because you're cutting a square out of the middle of the 16:9. Well, on the new DJI O3 system that I'm using with these V2 goggles, the native camera sensor is 4.3. That means if you have it in a 4.3 mode, if you're looking at a square in the goggles instead of a rectangle, you're actually getting more data at the top and the bottom of the image. So you can see more branches, you can see more ground. You know, run into things is easy, or in theory, you're still gonna run into things, but in theory, it's a little harder to do when you have more image data. The problem that you run into with either of these goggles really in the new O3 system is that in order to switch into 4.3 mode, you cannot be in 4K resolution. So a really big draw to the system is that you can shoot in 4K without an action cam on top of your drone, which means you can fly without risking an action cam. You don't have to spend $400 on a nice GoPro. You don't have to replace it whenever you break screens. I mean, there's just a lot of benefits to not running with a camera, and you can still get 4K footage right off the Air Unit in your drone. The problem is if you want to run 4.3, you have to switch to 2.7K. You can't shoot in 4K if you want to fly 4.3, and I think a lot of freestyle pilots fly 4.3. Cinematic pilots really like 16:9 because it helps when they're framing a cinematic shot for distribution on 16:9 formatted screens like most TVs are, but most pilots that do freestyle, proxy, acro, flow, spang are normally running 4.3 because we can see more of the image. So that means we are limited to 2.7K. Now on these goggles, I can record 2.7K at 120 FPS. And that's exactly what I did today. But that's DVR footage, right? Like, I'm not going to use DVR footage out of my HD0 goggles. Whoa, that's just gross. No, it's not. It's actually stored right to an SD card on the O3 Air Unit. You've probably seen this a million times in other channels' overviews of it. And it's stored in a really new format, HVEC, H265, really good compression algorithm, so it keeps the file size down even. It's pretty great, actually. If it's in 4K or 2.4 or 2.7K, it does all the same encapsulation. But is 2.7K enough for freestyle? Is it enough? Is this square image enough to get a good freestyle edit with? That's the question we're going to ask today, because what I did is I took it and I went and did the minimum. I did the bare minimum effort to get my O3 Air Unit in the air and fly it without any consideration for how the footage was going to look when I was done. Because I think that's what a lot of people are going to do when they throw their V2 goggles on and connect an O3 Air Unit. They're not going to set up their camera for looking cinematic when they're flying freestyle, because what's going to happen is they're going to get motion blur because they're going to set the FPS to 60 or 30, and then they're going to set the shutter speed and put an ND filter on it to make it look like they do on their action cams, and then it's going to blur in your pilot image. And then you're going to have high latency because the 120 FPS that I can run on this means that my latency ran normally about 20 milliseconds today. If you run at 60 or 30 frames per second, your latency is going to increase dramatically, and the frame rate of the camera is tied to what you set it to for your goggle feed. So if you set it to record at 60 FPS, it's going to send 60 frames per second to your goggles, which means the latency is going to be higher. So when you do all those things to make it look great in 4K, you're actually shooting yourself in the foot when it comes to freestyle. So the best thing you can do, right, is just throw it in 2.7K, kick up the frame rate to get the latency down, and not care about anything else. Just get a good image in the goggles so you can fly. But is that good enough for a freestyle edit? Let's find out. Here's the edit from today. This was shot in 2.7K, 120 FPS. All I did with it afterwards was stretch it into 16:9, and then throw a Johnny LUT on top of it and export the thing at 30 frames per second. Here you go.
The doctor said my sight is 20/20. So did I really just waste a lot of money? Since my eyes test perfectly clear, how the hell did I not see? You were my blind spot till I got to know your time's up. Now I'm gonna show you what happens when you mess with me. I'm gonna count to 1, 2, 3, and then you're dead to me. Yeah, you're history. Now that I finally see you're nothing but a blind spot. It's like you had me under a spell, but just in time, yeah, I could tell. You were my blind spot till I got to know your time's up. Now I'm gonna show you what happens when you mess with me. I'm gonna count to 1, 2, 3, and then you're dead to me. Yeah, you're history. Now that I finally see you're nothing but a blind spot.
Now you tell me in the comments below, is that good enough for a freestyle edit? And you go do that now before I tell you what I think. Okay, you've done that? Great. Here's what I think. I think it totally is. I think it's fine. I think that a lot of pilots out there want to run a GoPro 10 or 11 or 73. I don't know what you're running, but you want to run the newest thing because you like the 5K and you like the, I don't know, whatever. The whatever it is, you like it, right? It's new and cool and looks pretty. Yes, but there's also a lot of pilots out there that like running the DJI Action 2, which categorically is a worse camera than most GoPros, but they like it because it's lightweight and rugged. Well, let me show you why this might be the best bet if you're one of those pilots. This is my Mark V Perfect Freestyle build, and it comes in at 482 grams on this scale. Now this is my build with the O3 Air Unit and no action cam on top, and it comes in at 418 grams. Now that is a significant weight reduction, which means that this drone flies so much better with the O3 Air Unit in it and no action cam on top. And remember, the weight I just showed you was my Mark V without the action cam. If I put my bones on there, which is a light action cam, it's another 50 grams on top of the difference I just showed you. If you put a Hero 10 on there, that's like 150 grams different. That means that the O3 Air Unit is saving you a ton of weight if you are comfortable with the image quality. Now, there is some work you have to do if you're going to fly 4.3 and shoot in 2.7K, because you do have to dynamically stretch it into 16.9 and not make it look like googly garbage. So in the description below, I actually have a file in my Google Drive, which is a GyroFlow preset that will stretch it to the right size for you and set all of the settings and export it in 4K at the right bit rate. All of those things that you want to do because you want to do the upscale right then, and you want to get all the cornery stuff out while turning it into a rectangular image. So if you want that preset, it is down in the description, that thing down there that I couldn't say, below, if you want to go download it and use it. Now remember, this one is not stabilized. I'm not doing any stabilization. I'm not a pilot to talk to you about stabilization in this video because I never stabilize. We're going to do that later, and I'm going to do a whole review on the O3 Air Unit, don't worry. I just wanted to show you what minimal effort gets you out of the O3 Air Unit and ask you if that is good enough for you for a freestyle edit. If it is, then that's the direction you might want to go. Even if you're going to use the V2 goggles, they are perfectly acceptable. The image in this was way better than anything I have outside of the DJI system. So that's a terrific way to do it if you already own the goggles or you want to pick up a cheap version of the O3 system to run. Terrific. The OSD works. Don't worry about that. The OSD works in those goggles with the O3 Air Unit. The only thing you don't get is the 1080p live feed. You get 810p, and then you don't get the ability to record the OSD from BetaFlight. Meh. That's not too big a deal, right? But if you're a 4.3 pilot like me and you don't fly in 16.9 and you're stuck in 2.7K with the O3 system, what you saw is what you get. If that's good enough for you, then it's good enough for me. Enjoy your life. If it's not, keep running a GoPro on top. I'll do some direct comparisons between the bones and as good a video as I can get out of the O3 system and not pilot experience, because this was all about the pilot experience. And then you can compare for yourself there. But I think that a lot of the videos we've seen on the O3 system really focus on getting the best video quality out, not the best pilot feed. What I did today was give myself the best pilot feed. 120 FPS, 2.7K in 4.3, flat color profile, complete auto camera settings. I let it do its own thing, no image stabilization. That's the easiest thing for a pilot to get the best way out of the system. And that video you saw is what comes out the end of that, with just a Johnny LUT thrown on top of it for colory pleasure because I shot in flat, because flat gives you more contrast. Hint. You might want to use flat if you're using the O3 system and get more contrast in things. Anyway, I've rambled on about this for long enough. I think that will suffice for your opinions. Make sure you leave them in the comments below. I would love to know what you think about the quality of this. And if you want to see some of my footage out of a Hero 10 bones to compare it with, I have some freestyle edits previously on my channel. Go check one of those out. And that's the kind of footage I get out of my Mark V, because that's what flies the bones right now. So take a look. Let me know what you think. Are you going to run the O3 system? Are you going to invest that kind of money? Are you going to be running it with your V2 goggles? Or are you going to run it with the goggles too if you were lucky enough to get some? Or are you just going to stay completely away from DJI because the whole thing is just an expensive money pit? Because it is. But maybe it's a money pit you want to step into. That's up to you. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. I appreciate you all. Until next time, stay greasy. And I'll catch you later. I'm an itty bitty bug. These things make you look like a bug, don't they? Like horribly, right? But I'm a badass bug.